Thank you, Shagnikta. So I will start with Anvesha D. She did her internship from the University of British Columbia, and her project was in the microfluidic blood plasma separation, and which was in the fluid mechanics domain. Uh, Next, we have Anubhav Da. His project was from University of Guelph, and his topic was investigating heat exchange processes in greenhouses, and obviously in the domain of heat transfer. And we also have Shirshadi, who did her internship from McGill University in the domain of fluid mechanics also, and her topic was turbulent mixing in shallow flow confluences. Next, I will introduce Shinji Nidhi. Her topic was in also in fluid mechanics, and she did her internship from University of British Columbia in the project title Microfluidic Blood Plasma Separation. And our final two panelists are a bit different from the previous four panelists because the first we will talk about Niloida, who is a bit different from the previous mentioned panelist because he did her internship in the online mode, and he did that in the heat transfer domain from York University, and his project title was Thermal Energy Storage for Enhanced Photovoltaic Performance. And lastly, there is Anavoda, whose project domain was entirely different from our departmental subjects. His project topic was on intelligent tutoring systems, and he did that from Athabasca University. So I will hand over to Shagnikta to for the next proceedings of today's event. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanendu, and big welcome to Niloy, Anvisha, Shinjini, Oinabo, Anubhav, and Shisha for being with us here tonight. Now, before we move forward with the questions, I would like to inform our panelists that the questions that we have for you guys. So the questions are basically, if we can divide them into segments, there will be majorly about three different segments. One is application for the MITACS Globalink this internship. Second is getting into the MITACS Globalink internship, that is the interview procedure and what else follows that. And the third is once you get into it, how is the experience over there? And in case one does not make it through MITACS, what are the other opportunities where that one can go for? So, and also it's the first time in history that we are having 6 panelists together, on the same platform. So I'll try to, have the questions, come to each one of you by rotation. So the first question that I would have for all of you is the very basic question, yet the most important question, I think, for all the MITACS applicants this year. What is the basic procedure to apply for the MITACS program? So I think Anvisha can go first with this, and then I would ask the different parts of this question one by one to the other panelists.
Yes, so thank you, Shagnik, for having us here. And so the basic procedure is actually pretty simple. The MITACS website is very organized. And if you go and just look up MITACS application for summer internship 2023, so you'll have this website show up where you can just create a profile, you can register. And then they'll lead you through the, there are many subdivisions for the application. At one step, I think you complete your, I think you submit your CV. And in the second step, you write a research statement, a statement of purpose. There were multiple ones. I don't exactly remember the ones, but the people who are applying, I'm pretty sure you guys know it by now already. So the basic procedure is this, and you'll have it all laid out in front of you. So what you have to do is you have to build the CV. You have to create a good CV, and you have to make sure it is a proper research CV. You have to include what matters. I'm sure we'll come to that later. And so I think some more specific questions can help us get into the different bits of the application. So, yeah.
Right. So I think we'll get in the detailing part later. For this first question, I think I have a very specific question for Niloy in this aspect. I think as Shanendu already introduced Niloy, I think Niloy is the only one in the panel who's done the MITACS internship online. So Niloy, like a lot of the juniors had this question, like no matter if you're doing it offline or online, are there different portals for this, or are there different ways of applying for this, or is it the same common platform for everyone?
No, it's the same thing. After you get the internship, so if you have a problem in like traveling to Canada and like do the internship in the in-person mode, you can just drop a mail in their help desk, like explaining your reasons with suitable documents, and they'll take some time, and they'll mostly they do consider your application, and they uh, just uh, revise the entire platform for you. The platform for the in-person interns and the virtual interns are a bit different, the offer letter, etc. So they'll do the required things, and you will get the updated things as soon as possible.
Right. I think I just have another question with respect to this first, part itself. Like, usually whenever you apply to these different internships, via this websites, they usually have some catches. Like, maybe there's this one particular portion that you might need to look into with a, greater bit of detail or anything like that. So maybe Shisha, Shinjini, Oinav, and Anubhav, if you have anything to add with this respect, that any part of that application part where there might be a catch or something that you should be a little bit more cautious about while filling up the application form, you can just add on about that.
Well, I think the most important part is selecting the projects. So you should actually search up the projects and give a thought about it, like which one you would like to do, and preferences also. You shouldn't always base the preferences based on, say, QS world ranking list or something, like what you want to do, what you have the skills for. Plus, obviously, the ranking also matters. So make a good decision. It's on you. Make a good decision on what you want to work on and select your preferences in that manner. I think that is the most important part of the application.
Right. I think that takes us to our next question that I think Shinjini can take this question up. The next question is, what are the best institutes to apply for in Canada for this, MITACS internship? And just like, Shisha ended on this note that arranging the order of preference. So how exactly do you think, Shinjini, should this applicants this year be arranging the order of preference for the institutes for the MITACS thing this year?
I would suggest that don't run behind the top universities only. Like, don't only run behind the university fame only. Like, you should judiciously check the project description and the skill set it requires, and you have to check whether it describes you or not, or whether you have interest in that project. So I don't think it really matters which university you're applying to, or if you are very interested about the university fame, then you can do a judicious mixture of it. Separate 3 projects according your university preferences, and maybe 4 projects which align to your research interests, and also the skill sets that they want you have them. So that's about
Very aptly pointed out. I think Shinjini's, what Shinjini just talked about takes me to my next question. I think Oinavo can take this question up. So Oinavo, if we are weighing this two on the same scale, what do you think should be a greater preference for the students this year? A better project or a better University of Canada?
So actually it depends on how do you define a better project. So a better project might be that suppose there are 2 projects and you like this project better, but project A is hosted by a lower tier university than project B. So if that is the case, I would suggest that go to their website, read the project description first, and do your homework, research about it, go to the professor's website and read all the papers that are related to that project, and then make a decision whether you would like to go with project A or project B, because it's not always that the university that matters, because you can have a good experience in a lower tier university as well. It is not necessarily that you will get a superior experience in terms of research when you go to a higher tier university. So I think reading about the research projects and going to the professor's website and looking up all the research papers and reading about them is really the way to go about it.
Mm-hmm. I think Arnav mentioned a very pertinent point for this year's applicants. He talked about doing your homework well while doing this application. I think Anubhav, you can elaborate a little bit more about what exactly is this homework that these guys can do this year. I mean, while doing the bit of research about better projects, better universities, and more importantly, what I feel is even if they have shortlisted, let's say, a total of some number of projects, arranging these projects also in their certain order of preference is also something that they need to look after. So, do you have anything to add with this respect, Anubhav?
Um, to add to what the other MITACS interns had to say, so basically one important thing that I noticed while applying was, if you search a particular domain like fluid mechanics or something like that, not all the projects that you might want might show up on the portal. So make sure that you look up a lot of the projects that are showing up irrespective of whether it shows up on the portal or not. Like there will be, the universities will be listed, right? So go to their website, check the professors, check who you like, and try to find those professors instead of the domain, because a lot of the times the domains are not properly listed in the portal. So one thing is that. The other thing would be a lot of times professors from who were once belonging to really good universities drop down to some lower tier universities so that they get a bit a relaxed research environment. So one professor I applied to in Laval University was a very famous professor in his field, but Laval is not that highly ranked. So you might find very good professors even though they are not at the highest ranked universities. So checking the number of citations they have is a lot of times a good metric, but then again, make sure to check if the project aligns with your interests or not. That's crucial.
Right. I think my question that I started off with, like, which should we get a greater preference, better project or better university, brought me to my other half of the same question. Like, it's come down from better project or better university to better project or better professor. So, do you guys have anything to weigh in this respect? Like, whom to give a greater preference? Let's say you have seen some professor's profile who's listed like in this year's MITACS, and you really liked his or her body of work, but maybe that particular project which he or she is undergoing at this point in time, you like that project, certain things with respect to that project, but you're not very sure whether to go forward with that and whether to put that in your list or not. So how exactly should one target this thing, or how should one deal with this dilemma while dealing with this professor versus project thing? I think Anvesha or Niloy can take this up.
So yes, this is a very classic dilemma. Even we had faced this. So basically, when you see professors have a lot of PhDs and master students under them, and often professors are not very directly involved with the work interns are doing. I think in most cases it is so. They will usually tag the interns along with a PhD or a master student in some cases. So in that case, such as in my case, our project was, again, we were tagged along with a PhD. Our project was in that domain. And this year we checked the portal and we saw that under the same professor, the domain has completely changed. Our domain was microfluidics, and now the domain is tribology. And actually, we had met the guy there, and we know. So this year they are taking interns under that guy, as opposed to in like our case, we were under another lady. She was also doing her PhD. So it also comes down to the lab. There are maybe in one session, in 1 year, maybe there are 7-8 PhDs under her at a time, under the professor at one point of time. So, well, what you can do is you can go to the lab website instead of going to, after you've checked out the professor's profile. And if you cannot find very coherent work, like you'll see works from all domains under the professor's profile, because they work with a lot of PhDs and they work in a very diverse domain. Usually their research is not that narrowed down to, I mean, you can't expect just to find papers from your project under the professor's profile, obviously. So what you can do is you can go to the lab website under the university website. You can go to their lab page, and you can check out the people, the PhDs who have similar research, and chances are they'll allot you to that PhD and you'll be tagged along with them. So that becomes your point of contact with your professor. So you always have to check out their profiles too. And it's not very difficult if you actually put in the time. Again, that's the part of the homework. And you can again go to their research gate and then check out their citations and the kind of work they have performed. You can check out their LinkedIn. So that is usually a pretty good way to ensure that the project you're getting is going to be under someone who's going to guide you well and be a good point of contact between you and your professor. So yeah.
Right. I think that's like a very big insight for the MITACS applicants this year, that more than stalking the professor or the project, go and stalk his PhD guys. That's going to serve a greater bit of the purpose than what you guys are actually. I think, Neela, do you have anything else to add to this respect, like about the work part?
Yeah. So I'll say so you will be given 7 projects to choose. So I'll say you can keep a balance between both. So if you really like a project, for me, project should have an upper hand over the professor, because as Anvesha said, professor doesn't give that much like they are also very important, but choosing a better project sometimes might prove helpful for your future endeavors. So you should go with that. But like if you really like a professor, or if you see that his like profile in that particular field in which you are interested is really strong, you can keep like 1 or 2 such projects where like these professors are also there. So like give a more weightage to the projects, but also try to keep a balance between the 7 options which you go for.
Right. I think Shisha, you can just add a bit to this. Like Neera just talked about 7 projects. So is it in any particular order of preference that you're arranging these projects? And if so, then how to arrange the preference between those 7, or anything else that you have in mind while selecting this 7? This is a very specific number. So do you have anything to add to this respect?
Yes. You can search up the professor and say that your PhD students and all. But or like in my case, the PhD student or the master student's name will only come when you get selected. So you might not even, in some projects you might get, but in some projects you will not get that in the initial stage. So I think the most important is whether you can do that project. Like, interest is one thing, skill set is different. So you need both. But I would again say that MITACS is not very narrowed down, that you need to have that very compulsorily. So for in my case, like I have never done experimental work and my project was experimental. So they will teach you, and it will be a lot of self-work, self-learning as well. So I would say give some projects which you have experience in. Like might not be that in 7 all the you will match all the skill sets mentioned in all the 7 projects that you select. But in some you should try to make a balance of the projects in which in some you meet the criteria, in some you want to work on but might not meet all the criteria. So and then select the preferences. And I can give you like my example. I was interested in mainly fluid mechanics and thermal sciences. So my preference was mainly because I was more inclined with fluids. So my first 3 projects were related to the fluids domain, and my next 4 projects were related to the thermal sciences domain. So it depends on which interest you have. You arrange it that way. And for me, like again, I think my first you can give like the first project you can give something which you aspire to do. You might not need all the skill set initially, because suppose you get rejected from the first project, you are always being considered for the 2nd to the 7th project. So preferences matters obviously, but it is not like the ultimate. You can always change it after you get selected for a project later on the later stage.
I think before we get done with this first segment of today's questionnaire, that is the application part, I have one very specific question for Shisha. Like Shisha talked about the skill set versus interest thing. So Shisha, you are one of those like interns who has done like this internship in the experimental domain. So how do you choose exactly whether you want to do something in the computational domain or in the experimental domain? Like what skill sets do you need, or what helped you like take that decision while choosing your MITACS internship?
So, like, if it is a computational in experimental domain, they always don't expect you to know all these things because your university might not have that, or even like the COVID scenario was there. But in case of computational projects, they will, and to some extent, they will take into consideration if you have a knowledge. Suppose you know COMSOL or ANSYS or any kind of simulation softwares, or even MATLAB. Knowing MATLAB or any programming softwares is great because even for like experimental domains, you need to use softwares. You need to do some level of programming. So knowing those would give you a leverage for sure. But I wouldn't say like if it's mentioned like 5 to 6 softwares and you didn't know 5 to 6 softwares, you can still apply if you know like say 3 of those. You'll always say the time to learn, but chances are that if someone knows those softwares more, then obviously their chances of being selected is more. And by knowing, I mean doing a project, not like you know the software you just write in your CV. If you have a project, it's better to say in the interview.
Right. This brings me to my next question, which is again related to very important, another part of the application part. That is the LOR, the letter of recommendation. So I think this question I can address this to Oyanavo because he'll be in a better position to answer this. Oyanavo, like this juniors have this question that whom should we approach for the LOR, and more importantly, a question that's very very pertinent with your regard. That is, will the professors whom let's say we are approaching for the LOR, do they need to be in the same domain of the project that one is applying for? So can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. So yeah, indeed, LOR is probably the most important part because professors usually see the CV first and then they see the LORs. So what you can do is the LORs should come from professors who actually know you well, know you and your work well. It is very important. So generic letters like he's a hardworking, sincere student and he's a top student. I mean, these do not work well. So what I did was the domain of my project was a bit different. It was in computer science, and all the projects that I had done before was in heat transfer well, basically I had 2 letters of recommendation. One from Saurav Sarkar sir, under whom I did the heat transfer project, and another was a professor whom I took numerical analysis class, numerical methods class. If you remember, we had that class. So it was algorithmic based class, and I actually studied above and beyond what was taught, and I actually interacted with the professor after the class, and I think that impressed the professor. And when I said I was applying for algorithmic type and CS related project. So I told him that you should definitely mention that I have an interest or potential to learn algorithms and to work and contribute meaningfully in algorithmic projects or CS related projects. So I requested him to write the letter accordingly. So if you are not sure whether you will get a good letter of recommendation from professor or not, maybe you can have a talk with him and discuss that. Well, these are my interests and these are my skill sets and this is my work. So on the basis of that, maybe he will write an recommendation letter.
Right, that was indeed very, very insightful regarding the LOR part. Now talking about another very important part, that is the CV. So I think I would like Anubhav you to address this thing, like CV making a research CV. What do you think are the components, or what should be the headers or the headings or whatever we should be including in the CV to make it adequate for applying for a program like that of MITACS?
So for the CV, I think an important part, like one of the crucial parts, is research experience. So you need to properly list down whatever research projects you worked on, and instead of just writing down the topic of the research project and the professor who's guided you, it's important to mention the action points, like what is your role in the project and what is the bigger picture of the project. So the professor must know that what the project could lead to, what it could contribute further once the project is completed. So the action point and about the action points, those are you need to be very clear about the ways you've contributed so that the professor who will be taking you up for the internship knows that you will be able to contribute in that way in his project as well. And another thing is being able to show that you are a consistently good student. So having showing your school results, like whatever you've got in your 10th, 12th, and your CGPA the until the application of the MITACS projects and all that is there. So making sure that you have good results till then is important. And another thing is showing your research interests so that the professor knows that the domains you're applying to, you have a good idea about them. So like being more specific, like writing fluid mechanics and heat transfer is very broad. Instead, mention topics like fluid structure interaction, or maybe if you're interested in AI or something, unsupervised learning algorithms or something like that can be helpful. Also, mention a bit about your hobbies because that gives your CV a bit of a personality. Because sometimes professors don't want to hire numbers; they want to know the person behind the CV. So that is also a thing you should consider, because I know a professor who really likes students who play basketball. He just has preference towards them. So maybe your hobby is something another professor likes. I've mentioned that. I think that's all from me.
Right. So Anubhav mentioned about a very important thing, like to not make one CV a very generic one and to focus on very specific parts. I think Shinjini, you can elaborate a little bit more on this aspect, like what exactly you add in your CV that made it like more, aligned or more focused on very specific things that regarding what you have done in the past and what you would like to do, during the internship or in the future regarding, your research thing. So what exactly were those components of your CV?
Okay, so I have mostly pursued research work and I don't really have anything non-research related in my CV. So my CV is mostly focused on my previous projects that I have done. I have also mentioned the papers that were conference papers that were published from that. I mentioned that, and like Anupam said, the 10th, 12th marks, and which softwares I know, and what other courses which are related to the project that I have taken. Yeah, that's about it.
Right. I think one very important question that I have with this regard, I think this one, I think Shinjini, Shisha, or Nisha, either one of you can take this up since you guys have already published a few papers together. So can you just elaborate a little bit on this aspect? Like, do published papers really, act like an added advantage for your selection in MITACS? And how much do this, kind of paper publishing kind of things, like before applying for MITACS, what kind of a role does it play in your selection for the program?
Like a published paper definitely gives you an edge over other candidates, especially if it's in the same field as the project. But again, it's not a necessity. Like if you don't have it, and if you can demonstrate that you have worked on other research projects and you have the knowledge to complete this project, then I think that suffices. Like paper is not really that much important. No professor expects from you to have like 5 to 7 publications. So that's fine if you don't have one.
Right. I think,
I'd like to add something. Yeah, so some professors, if you have any publications, and if you don't, that's completely fine as well. There's no reason to get anxious right now. But if you do have them, you should, one thing for your interview, this is, if you get called for the interview, you should be very thorough with like if you have sent it to a conference, you should be very thorough with it's a seemingly trivial thing, but you should be thorough with the name of the conferences, because I was asked in my interview to name the conferences I had sent my papers to, and I just remembered the abbreviations, and so I just named the abbreviations, and my professor asked me where was this conference, and these are again such unexpected questions, and I had to recall what was the expanded form of the conference. So professors can ask you anything. It is so heavily dependent on their inclinations that there might be some professors who just would not take any students without publications, and there might be some other professor who would choose a student without publications but with better skill sets or better ongoing projects than the one with publications. So it's just a matter of luck. So but be thorough with where you send your paper to, and these again seemingly trivial details, so that you know that so that you can show that you have worked for this and you know where your paper is in the pipeline, and well, where it is going to be published. So you have to be thorough with everything, especially for the interview. So yeah, that's what I would add.
Right. I think Shisha can elaborate a little bit on this aspect. Like Anvisha talked about a very important thing, ongoing projects. So the CV, like what I was trying to focus a little bit more on is like the CV has a number of different parts. Like the main thing is like a research CV, as far as I can understand, is very different from a job-oriented CV, right? So you have to have a mention of relevant projects and non-relevant projects, and you also need to have a mention of completed, let's say published papers or completed projects and ongoing projects. So how do you strike a balance between this, Shisha, and how do you exactly frame the CV, keeping in mind all this factors and all the subheadings and domains?
Yes, so when you are listing your projects, I think you should start listing the project in such a manner. Suppose the project which you have worked for the longest time or you know the most about, you can put that in the first project that you mentioned, and slowly, like towards the end. And if you have an ongoing project which has like just started, like for in my case, I had just started my minor project. I didn't mention that because if they, I mean, you can do it because by the time the interview call comes, you will do some work, I expect in that domain. But suppose you don't, you have nothing to tell about that. So I would suggest only mention projects which you have actually, like what you have worked on, and mention the timeline, like from when to when you have worked on that project. And in MITACS, I remember in MITACS application, they have a CV format in their website itself. Try to follow that format. Then you will almost miss all the requirements. You will not miss out on any points or something. And and if something is ongoing, you can mention like alongside the project that it's ongoing, but make sure that it's ongoing since a month or 2 months, not like it just started and you mentioned it in your CV. So I think that's all of it.
Right. Neela, do you think like one should put whatever, like let's say major project is not in the picture because major project takes place in fourth year, but in third year, let's say somebody is doing a minor project. Do you think this minor project should be a part of this non-relevant project section of your CV? Like, should one be putting that while applying for MITACS?
So it depends. So it depends on the domain of the minor project. So if it's like if it aligns with what you are applying for or what you want to get, or the majority of the projects which you have like chosen in among the 7 ones, then I think, and of course if you actually have a basic idea, because by the time the interview call comes you will have some more idea for sure, because you will be having your semesters uh, immediately after that, and it would be the end of the minor project term. So you would like definitely be having some idea about that. So I would suggest that if like if it aligns with what you are, if you want what you want in the as your MITACS project, if it is aligning with that, you can like mention that for sure. And one more important point, like while mentioning all your projects, do mention the supervisor as well. So because it will give a reference, like under whom you have worked. So your MITACS prop can actually look after their profile or something, so that he gets an idea about like under what professors you have worked under and their corresponding work in that field.
Right. And like another question that I have with this respect is, let's say you have a particular project that you have done, and it's you have sent that out for publishing, but it's not published yet, or it's somewhere in the process. So is that something that you can mention in your CV already?
Right. Yeah, we can.
So I think this brings me to the end of this application part, and I think a very important part that we are going to discuss in this session itself is, since we are not very sure if we will be able to have the six of you again on the same panel again for such a good session. So we can talk a little bit about the interview part as well. So let's see, we are very hopeful the number of candidates from this year and from the years coming forward would be getting selected, would be getting passed to the first round and would be selected for the interview process. So the very first and very basic question is, what kind of questions or what type of questions can one expect in the MITACS interview if shortlisted? I think any one of you can take this question on. In case you want me to take names, I think Anvesha can take up the question first.
Yeah. So again, this drastically varies from professor to professor. I have seen people who have been asked to write codes in their interviews, and I have seen people who have barely been asked anything. They've been asked about the weather. They've been asked about how is why do you want to come to Canada and what places do you want to visit, and it just varies so dramatically that I don't even have any specific advice to give. But you should always prepare for the worst. You should prepare like you are going into a very heavy technical interview. You should brush up everything related to your projects. Your CV should be watertight. You should know everything, and you can I'll again repeat that, expect the worst. And maybe it's a research CV you have, and you have, maybe let's say you have just started working with ANSYS, and you mentioned that. But you have to know what kind of solvers are used in ANSYS and what you are exactly solving for, mesh specifics. Again, this is a worst case scenario, but they might get into the details. It is very professor dependent. And these are, for you list 7 projects. And usually students, if you get an interview call at all, it'll not be more than 1 or 2 interview calls. So you don't have a lot of leeway here. You have to be very thorough with your CV and with the skills you have mentioned you have, so that if they throw any curveballs at you, you should be able to answer them because they are mentioned in your CV. So you can prepare for this, maybe not like a corporate interview or a master's interview, but you should be able to handle every kind of question they throw at you. So, and you might want to brush up, maybe if your projects are mostly the projects you've mentioned in your CV, and the project you have applied for is in the thermal domain. So you should be you might want to brush up your thermal basics. You might want to go through the heat transfer book, and the regular questions, like they might ask you what is Nusselt number, or what is an LMTD heat exchanger, something so basic. And your entire interview might come to conclusion like with that one question they decide to ask you. And Canadian profs are usually, professors working in universities in Canada. So there are there's a diaspora obviously there. So my professor, she was East European. She was living in Canada. And my interview was pretty relaxed. She asked me about the work I have done. She asked me to explain my projects. She again asked me this question, what conferences I had sent to. She asked me the names of the conferences. And she asked me why I wanted to pursue this project, or what, because I didn't have any work in the domain of biofluids before. We did not have this course in JU, and my project was on biofluids. And she asked me that, where did you come to know about this from, and why do you want to do this? So I had prepared, and I also, I said the truth. Basically, I told her how I found out about this. And so it was very relaxed, but I know of people who have had stressful interviews as well. Stressful as in they have been asked to answer very heavy technical stuff, or maybe write codes and show them. So you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared well, and your CV is your syllabus for the interview, definitely. So, yeah.
I think what Anvesha just talked about can be summed up in 2 very important headers. One is hope for the best while prepare for the worst, and the second thing is go through very, very minor details that one might have missed during our UG courses, but these little things are the ones that might decide your fate at the interview. But what Anvisha also elaborated brings me to my second question. This is a very important question and a very, it's a very crucial one with respect to the fact that she talked about how a lot of these professors are very chilled and very relaxed and they try to strike a conversation with you. But being a MITACS, applicant, there should be a very thin line between like where the formal part and the informal part, like where you should not be crossing that line. I think Shisha can just take this question up that where do you think one should be drawing the line and what kind of conversation should one be having, like where you shouldn't seem like very informal or very like casual or that kind of an attitude should not come across in front of the person with under whom you're trying to do the internship.
Yes, no, don't appear casual. Appear friendly, I would say, not casual. Show them your interest. That is, I think, the biggest question, that the most important question is why. Why you want to work under them? Why you want to work in this field? Why you want to work in that lab? I think I faced all these questions in my interviews. Why again and again? And again, and one more thing, like if you don't get an interview call, like I got interview calls, but if you don't get disheartened, because there were a lot of MITACS interns who were selected directly without interview calls. So don't get disheartened if you don't get interview calls. You might get an actual selection letter directly. So, and one more thing, that like the professor might pick up some small talk, like, and one more thing they asked me was like, both my professors, would I be interested in higher studies in Canada? So prepare your answer accordingly, and we are very diplomatic even if we are not. So answer it accordingly, and that is an important decision factor because MITACS does want to give this internship because they want to attract students to Canada for higher studies. So answer accordingly, and interviews are not very stressful. Like prepare, and it will be okay because they're generally very polite and they don't really like grill you to a very extent. So.
So Shinjini, could you just, let's say in 2 or 3 pointers, could you just now, put this entire thing like in 2 or 3 pointers, like what are the 2 or 3 most important things that one should be doing while preparing for the interview? Let's say you've got the interview call after, your initial application and you're preparing to get selected. So what are the things that you should be keeping in mind while doing this preparation phase?
I have had 2 interviews. Both of them were like very chill. All they ask about is the projects you have done before. They want to know more about the projects and how they want to figure out like how close the project is to their own project. They want to know if the skill set matches or not. Look out for like facial cues. Sometimes it happens so that you might be talking so rapidly that the professor misses some points and like she's maybe asking something and you miss the question. It has happened to me. She asked me about the conference and maybe I switched the topic while talking very fast. So that was a problem. I messed up there. But anyway, like the professors are friendly, so no need to worry that much. Try to be relaxed. Also prepare the answer to the question that sometimes they'll ask, do you have any questions? Please do ask something. Like one of our friends didn't prepare that question and her interview didn't go very well. Like it was only 2 minutes or 3 minutes long. That's not a good sign. So prepare that question. Yeah.
Right. So I think we already got 2 very important questions that one should be preparing for. One is, do you have any questions for the interviewer? And secondly, if you want to return to Canada for a full-time like research career. I think Anubhav, you can talk a little bit about this part. Shinjini already talked about like looking out for facial cues and for understanding the pace with which the interviewer is asking you questions and responding accordingly. Like a lot of our juniors and number of people who are applying this year or are planning to apply the next year, they had this question that a lot of this Canadian people, or like let's say we have got professors from different countries in this university in Canada, right? So they have got a very different accent from that of ours. So is it a major problem while you're sitting for this interviews, or did you personally face any problem while answering your questions?
As long as your diction is fine, I think they'll be able to understand. I mean, being able to mention the keywords, I think as long as you're clear, they'll be able to understand, and being able to understand them is not that much of an issue because most of us like have been watching movies, right? And even if you haven't, I think they speak clearly as well. And most of the things they ask about is, I think, as far as I've heard, mostly the professors have asked about what you've worked on and why do you want to come to Canada. This is another question that gets asked, that why do you think Canada would be a good place to go to for an internship? And they'll ask about the labs as well. I think an important part that Shinjini mentioned is, if the interview lasts for a very short amount of time, that means you're probably not going to get into that project, which had happened to me. So yeah, but then again, don't lose hope, because even though one of my interviews didn't go well, I still got into another project. So yeah, so it's not the end of the world, but then again, prepare as well as you can.
I got a very important question from you for you, Ainabo. Like, how important is searching up the interviewer's profile, in depth before sitting for the interview? Like, what role does this play before the interview part?
Yes, so it's really very important to know the details. I mean, not very detailed, but at least have an idea of what the professor is working on, his current projects, and specifically the project that you're going to work on. There will always be some of the papers listed under his profile, his lab website. You should always read them and try to understand them, because it might happen that in an interview, well, he might ask that, have you read this? Have you read this paper? So what did you like about this paper? So it happened with me. My interview was a bit of a mix of technical and HR-based normal questions, like, why do you want to Canada? Why do you want to come to Canada? Why do you want to do research in this area? All those standard general questions, and technical questions that were related to the project that I was going to do. And I read some of the papers and I understood, I mean, not completely, but I understood something from each and every paper, and I explained it to him, and he was impressed with that. So you might get asked about these things, so you should definitely check all the papers and the projects that the professor.
So I know when you talk about like reading up a paper, like let's say you just got a call, let's say like you got a call today and you have the interview, like let's say tomorrow night, or like in a very short span. So do you think, like, if you are going through a few papers of the interviewer, just going through the abstract, introduction, the conclusion part, do you think these three important parts will serve the purpose while you're sitting for the interview?
Well, it again depends on the professor. If he goes, generally he will not go into very detail, but he might ask you, of course, if you read the abstract and the conclusion and what are the results, and you understand them, I think you're good to go.
I think the next question that I have for you guys is, I think Niloy can take this up. Like, SOP is something that varies from person to person, of course. Everybody's research interests are very different. Everybody's aspirations are very different with this field of research. But what do you think are the very important parts? Or if you have to, let's say like during our childhood when we used to be taught ACEs and all, we used to be given a rough framework of an ACE. So if you have to like put that down, for our juniors, like the rough framework of an SOP that they should be submitting for this year's MITACS, how would you just, put that up, like the rough
So like, apart from your CV and like the CV, the transcript, the LOR, etc., you are given here the like two places. One will be the general description of your skills, background knowledge, research interest, and experience. Like, all the 4 points have to be covered in 100 words. So you have to like choose your words like judiciously, because you have only 100 words. The second part is to elaborate about your achievements, I guess, right? So in the first part, so like you should be able to like elaborate about all the 4 points. So they have mentioned the 4 points, and you have to touch and go, because you can't be like go into like details because of the word limitations. But like, you have to mention about your academic background, the subjects which like fall in alliance with your domain which you have taken, maybe relevant softwares if they have asked for it in the requirements. Then like, you have to go for your interest, like in which field like do you want to go for, or as someone also mentioned, that mentioning just heat transfer or fluid mechanics is a very broad field. So try to be more like specific about your interest, and about the work which you want to do. Uh, it doesn't always have to be experimental or stuff, but try to be more specific again. And the experience, now in experience, you in 100 words you can't keep on elaborating your the work which you have done. So you have to give a basic overview of the entire thing in a very few number of words, and you have to depend upon your CV for the elaboration of the complete elaboration of the projects. Now coming to the achievements, so try to focus. I personally had given my achievements in like bullet points, so like that would I don't know, but it might at least reduce your number of words, because in complete sentences it may be a bit elaborate also. So try to give your major achievements, in the sense, if you have a paper, if you have won good competitions and stuff. Also try to mention a bit about your extracurriculars, uh, if you are associated with any club or not, what position do you hold, um, uh, and stuff. So and that's it. And one more thing, which I like in my interview, one thing was asked, that why should I like what's special in you which is not in other interns. So like this, I didn't expect this question. So be prepared with points like what can distinguish you, and what makes you most suitable for this project, your experience, your interest. Another thing is, why do you want to go in this field? So for me, it was the sustainable energy field. So why do you want to pursue this field, and what's your opinion about its future, the future research of prospects in this particular field? So be a try to be more specific about what you want to do as a continuation to this project, and try to feel make him feel that this will be in alliance with and you will be able to put in your heart and soul into it. So that's it.
Right. Kingshuk has a very important question. There's a part of adding transcripts. Does one need to add his or her class 10th and 12th mark sheet also? So that
No.
is a necessary, right?
No.
Okay, I think now this brings us to one of the most important questions. As we are nearing the end of the session, one of the most important questions that I have for you guys is a lot of these people are aspiring to be MITACS interns this year, but of course, due to limitations in number of vacancies that they have and a lot of other issues, a lot of them might not make it through MITACS. So a lot of them want to pursue research internships abroad. Now, if this application of MITACS is not selected, what do you think are the other good options that are available for them, and how could they be pursuing those, and what would be the at what time of the year should they start applying for those opportunities? I think again any one of you can take this up and talk a little bit about the opportunities other than MITACS that are there for this people out there.
Well,
So
that is there, but I would say not to try for that right now, because if you had to do that, you should have started from July itself, because I myself didn't do that, and later I realized that the deadline is really close, like October. But you have other options, like in France, you have the Chartered Scholarship, so that's around March. So it's a bit late, but keep track of the deadline. You can apply there. And other than that, there is one offered by NUS in Singapore. So you can, an NTU to NTU Connect.
It's
These are
NTU.
all in a bit later stage, like December. So yeah, NTU Connect. So you can apply there. And these are mostly, I've seen seniors from our universities get in. There might be other programs if anyone else wants.
Right. Does anybody else have anything else to add?
Like there is one, it's known as the EPFL E3 program. It's in Equal Polytechnic. It's a bit competitive, I know. It's in like Equal Polytechnic, Switzerland. So that's one important thing. And in addition, the NTU India
Niloy,
Connect is
just sorry to cut you in between. I
yeah.
think PFL, is it only for the circuital branches or is it open to
No,
the
no.
like? It's for everyone, right?
It's
For all,
like
for all.
open, but then they mostly hire IITs and
Yeah.
artists.
Yeah,
Right.
I
Like
told
as
you,
far
it's
as
a
I
bit open.
knew, like the research projects that they have, are mostly like the circuital branches related ones in EPFL.
Yeah, the number of projects in mechanical is very less. Like I remember in the previous year it was only 5 projects. So yeah, it's like quite difficult. Another one is the NTU India Connect, like as they mentioned. So like that's it is also competitive, but it is feasible for for NTU India Connect. It's like compulsorily online, and actually you have to pay a bit amount for that, but it's completely fine because it's a very recognized one, so you can definitely go for it. Then other than that, there is a Ludwig Prandtl internship in for Germany. Like mentioning CERN would again be a bit more unrealistic thing because like it's too difficult, and there are a lot of internships. I think Anvesha can elaborate on like they're in Chinese University of Hong Kong, or
Yeah, I
yeah,
actually could share something here. Last year, I had made this
yeah,
Google sheet where I had listed. Well, I found out about some foreign internships from our seniors too. They had a list themselves, and I put it in a Google sheet and I added some more. And now the thing is that not all of these accept students from JU. Some of them might have this IIT quota or something like that. So you have to check it out. You have to look things up yourself. But this can give you the gross list. This is a long list. And I could share the link here. And well, MITACS is sought after because of its acceptance rate. And well, the others, they of course you can get in, but it will definitely be more difficult. And well, there's always the luck factor and so many other factors. And of course you should start looking up these websites and maybe the application portals and start noting the dates. So I had made this sheet where I started noting the I think deadlines last year. So I can give you the link right now in the chat box. You can access the sheet. And well, the dates are again obsolete, so they're from last year. Don't look at the dates. You can well look them up and make a fresh sheet yourself. And also please do look up if they accept students from JU or if they accept students from non-circuital branches. Like I think the E3 program, or I don't remember, ETH Zurich, maybe I was going to apply and I found out that they only accept CS grads, CS undergrads. So, well, you have to look those up yourself, but I can again share the list. So I think I can share it in the chat box here.
Right. I think that would be very helpful, Amisha. We have got two important questions in the chat
So
box.
another internship.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in case you're interested in robotics, so there's an internship program at CMU, Carnegie Mellon University, Robotics Institute Summer Scholars. You can apply there. The deadline is generally January 15th or something like that. So you can apply to CMU in case you're interested in robotics.
It would be great if you all could just, whatever internships you all talked about, if you could just drop in some links or whatever. Like Anvisha talked about a Google Sheet. If you could just drop it in the chat box, it would be very helpful for our juniors. I think we have got two important questions in the chat box. Vishal talked about, do we need to meet any GPA criteria? So,
no.
right. So there's
Yeah.
I mean,
There is a
yes,
GPA criteria. It's
There's
8.
8. You need to have it.
Okay.
Okay, so it's a 8 plus GPA criteria, fine. And Shonin talks about the DAT scholarship. Like, do you think, you guys have anything to add about that? Like, how easy it is to get into the DAT scholarship with respect to the MITACS one, and what usually are the deadlines for the DAT scholarship?
That is tougher, I would say, than MITACS, because even if in that you can convince a professor to take you and work with them, you might not end up getting the funding from that. Because like in MITACS, you get the project listed in their website. In that, you don't get a project listed in the website. You need to talk, mail professors individually, select the project with them, talk to them, convince them that to take you for the summer. Then you need to apply to the DAT portal so that you get the funding. And another thing, like for that scholarship, I think it's tough to get right now because one needs to actually start meeting from July and August. So you can obviously right now you can do it, but chances are a bit less.
Right. And I think Shinjini was talking about something related to that.
Yeah, Shisha pretty much summed it up. But I think you can still apply for that now because I have a friend from IIT KGP who did apply around November for that, and he got into. And a lot of people from JU actually got in. I think 5 people from JU got in that, but none from mechanical though. But still, you can try. Like you can try your luck by contacting professors. There's no harm in trying.
Right. Soham talked about, do we need to multiply the CGPA with 9.5 or 10? I believe this is related to the CGPA to percentage transformation. So do you guys just take this up?
It's 10.
Okay, I think we have got 2 questions that get kept as optional questions. Like one of them is, do they arrange the accommodations for you all, like, or do you have to arrange them, yourselves? This is one of the questions that the juniors had for the MITACS internship. So,
Like MITACS doesn't take any responsibility for the accommodation part. You like they will give you the money and you have to figure it out on your own. But again, it's easy if you are staying in campus housings. The universities do offer you campus housings, but again they are a bit on the expensive side. So it would be better if you can go not off campus. I'm not saying off campus, but you should look for summer sublets. You can find them in Facebook groups. So you should start looking for them around like March. There are a lot of summer sublets during that time. And try to like be aware about the rent prices in Vancouver especially. It's like very costly. Try to like negotiate the price a bit. So yeah, that's an issue.
Amrita had dropped in a question in the chat box. Does one have to cover the traveling and staying expenses?
No, nothing. Like
Traveling,
it's
no.
absolutely full. Yeah, like we have to book the tickets, but MITACS again reimburses us with the money. So like there's no extra expense you have to give from your pocket.
It's like more than enough stipend you are going to get.
Yeah, it's more than enough. Yeah.
Right. So Shisha's statement brings me to another question that was also listed optional. Is the project grant enough for the cost of living for 3 months? So
more than enough. You can roam around on the weekends. You can like eat properly, all you want. It's a lot of stuff.
Well, still, there's always the excitement of being in a new country, and you might end up splurging. Like, I had missed a flight in Canada, so that cost me quite a lot of money. So, I would, if you guys get in, I would definitely advise you to be careful and well, not get swayed by the excitement.
Yes.
If you want to know how to save money, contact Anubhav there. He has saved a lot.
right, I think we can have a different session on this altogether.
Like while
So
booking
another
the
thing that I'd like to add
through
about
Facebook, through
Go
Facebook,
ahead, Shreya.
always ask the person who is subletting to give you a tour of the house that it actually exists and you're not getting scammed and all. So try subletting form students and get a tour of the house you will be subletting. So
And please don't send any money without a written contract.
yes,
Please.
yes, absolutely don't send any money without a contract.
I would recommend even after getting the contract, don't send money before you reach Canada. Okay, that would be
Well,
preferable.
if that's an option, sure, but well, they often might hand over the deal to someone else. So yeah, you should have to balance that.
Yeah, keep pressurizing the homeowner that I'm still there, I'm coming. I'll pay once I get there.
Okay, Kingshuk has asked for a validation kind of thing. How should one write within 100 words? Should it be like something that should consist of the general description of skills, background knowledge, research interests, and experience? So do you think that pretty much sums up what you need to write within 100 words? He has talked about general description of skills, background knowledge, research interests, and experience. Do you guys
The
feel there should be anything
research.
else that, yeah?
Well, there is a different section for the research, right? After the general descriptions of skills and notable achievements, you have a section where you briefly describe the research work you have completed. So I would suggest that you can also write that in bullet points. Otherwise, there might be, if you write, I have worked on, I have worked with, I have assisted in, they eat up words. And you don't want that because this is the main section. They care about this the most. So what you can do is, what I did was, I placed a hyphen and then wrote the name of my project topic, and then I wrote beneath it 2 lines about each project, maybe 1 or 2 lines. But that should explain what you have worked on, what part of the project, and what softwares you have used, and like for which softwares you use for what. One software for data acquisition, one software for post processing. So these things, and also please do not write paragraphs on that. You cannot write paragraphs, obviously. There's a word limit. But again, even in your CV, I would suggest that, yeah, as Anubhav had mentioned, you should mention the pertinent points under your research project headers, but also don't make it so big that the professor does not want to, that the professor just skims through your CV because it seems so texty. So there has to be a balance in that. And well, bullets always work. They don't eat up words. So you can, maximize the number of words you're given. So yeah.
Right, so but it shouldn't be much text heavy. It should consist of bullet points if possible and should focus a little bit on the keywords part. Shomodev has asked, what's the ideal time for application? Like I need to do a lot of preps, hence I am asking. I'm not sure whether he's asking for the ideal time for application for MITACS or for like internships in general. I think you guys could just reiterate the time for application for MITACS, like when does it usually end?
I think like in a week or so.
It's September 22nd.
Yes. So
it's usually around the September end of every year, right?
yes.
I think
yeah.
second year is a good time to start working on projects because in first year you hardly have any technical background. So from third sem, try approaching professors for projects and start working on it. Then by the time of application, your profile will be ready. So that's fine.
Right. Do we need to add that MITACS CV template or any other CV template would work? I believe you already addressed this question. It's like the MITACS specific CV template that they need to follow. Like, correct me if
Well, I didn't follow it, so it worked. But then again, follow the template. I think that's better.
Yeah, I didn't follow it either, and it's literally mentioned in the website that if you don't follow this MITACS template, it's not going to reduce your chances or anything. So you do you.
Right. So they can be following their own template styles as well. What are the future opportunities for someone who has done the internship? So I think one of you could take this on.
If you are a MITACS Globalink research intern, you will later be eligible for the MITACS graduate fellowship. Like if you are applying for any Canadian university for masters, you will get a 15,000 Canadian dollar scholarship for the whole master's duration. And also it's easier to get into Canadian colleges once you have that MITACS tag on your profile. So yeah, that's a good thing about it.
How easy it is to return to your own university when you have already done your internship after you have completed your MITACS thing? Like how easy it is to return to that particular internship, let's say under the same professor for your masters when you want to return as a full-time, let's say, master's student?
Actually, a lot of professors actually provide an offer before you leave. I'm not saying everyone does, but a lot of professors will say, if you want to come back here, contact me so that I can refer your name to the admission faculty and get you in. So yeah, that's pretty easy if you are going to apply in the same college itself. Like you have very high chances to get in. And people have done in previous years. Even if you don't want to apply in the same college, you can apply to different. It's always an advantage. Like you can apply to other Canadian colleges as well. I think Ronak Da was from JU, did his MITACS internship from Laval, I think, and he's right now studying in UBC. He's pursuing his masters. So, yeah.
Right. I think we are nearing the end of the session, and I would like to end the session with one last important question. It's addressed to all 6 of you. I think each one of you can take this question one by one, and we could end the session with that. What are the differences that you've observed during your research internship? There at the MITACS universities, with respect to the kind of experience that you have had here at JU with respect to research projects. So how exactly is the life at a foreign university, a Canadian university, different from that at the life at JU? How exactly is the quality of education, the research aspects, the personal advantages and perks, and the people around you, the cooperativeness of the researchers working there, let's say, how different is it there at Canada, at those universities where you've already had your stay for the last 3 months, and how much does that add to your personal build up, and your how does that add to your preparation, let's say, for the next journey that you all are going to undergo? I think all of you need to answer this question, and we could start with if we have to start in alphabetical order, let's start with Anubhav.
So one thing is, like in general, about people from Canada, they're very nice, especially in the English-speaking provinces. They'll go out of the way to make you feel good. They'll help you out if they see that you're struggling in any way. They'll make sure to be there. At least my professor did not offer to help me. I didn't need his help in any other way other than like the project itself. But some of my other friends needed help when it comes to accommodation and all of that. So they were very helpful in that regard. And when it comes to the research work, so I didn't expect much of experimental work while going there, but even then I got to work on stuff that I would have liked to, even though I didn't think that I would have been able to. So in the labs in JU, you don't get to work on instruments or stuff like that. It's mostly CFD softwares or other things like that. So experimental research experience is something you'll gain probably if your project allows for that. Yeah, that's what I'd like to add.
Right. Anvesha?
Yeah, so first thing I observed in Canada is that weekends exist. They don't exist here in India. You work through the week and you work through the weekend. And so in Canada, this was sadly, this was a cultural shock for me that nobody is willing to work on weekends, and this is something they follow very strictly. They don't work on weekends. They go hiking, they go kayaking, they do all sorts of outdoor activities, especially in Vancouver, because it's there is the outdoor culture there. And apart from that, Canada is very relaxed. The professor, the PhD, they are very relaxed, and sometimes, they are relaxed to a dangerous extent. So they might give you a loosely defined problem. This is something we had faced, that our problem, we had discussed the problem multiple times and everything, but when it came down to the actual problem we were supposed to solve, we weren't given a written documentation of the problem. We just had to gather it from our conversations and our discussions with our PhD. And so you have to be very alert, and you have to see that you are not letting the work slip from your hands, because sometimes it's all in your hands. You have to go and pester your PhD to have meetings, to I don't know, to give you more information, and how the project, in which direction the project will go. Because our PhD, she was in a difficult phase of life. She she has been doing a late PhD, and she has had two very bad accidents, and she has had concussions, and she finds it difficult to get back to her work very often. She doesn't come to the lab very often, and but it became difficult for us because we had to pester her again and again for looking at our work and for telling us where to go from here. And so you can always, of course, you have your professor, but again, the PhD is usually the point of contact. So and of course, one more thing in Canadian universities is that whatever you need for your work will always be provided to you. If you need some, well, like in our case, we were running simulations, but my laptop wasn't able to handle a large amount of data at first. So later, I didn't know what to do about it. So I downgraded the problem myself and did a simpler version of the problem. And when I showed my professor, she told me that no, you should have asked. I would have given you access to a PC here. So I didn't know I could ask for that. So you, of course, you always have to ask for what you need. I didn't know. I thought I was supposed to make do with what I have. So you always ask for help, and they have so many resources. They have an abundance of resources, and they can give you access, they can help you. And but you always have to ask, and you always have to, well, show that you are putting in effort, and you have to show up, you have to submit your reports. So this is there. It's not all that relaxed when it comes down, because in the end you have to get some work down. You have to get some work down on paper. So definitely this is something I found.
Andresha, before you put yourself on, put your mic on off, like you could address this question that Tomojit has written. Like, does getting multiple LORs give any preference to the application?
Not at all. I submitted only one LOR, and that was enough. Some people submitted two, some even submitted three. So that, I don't think that makes a difference. But the one LOR should be sufficient as well. Again, I think someone had mentioned or another had mentioned what points should be in it. That the teacher should know you. It's not just any random teacher you approach and you're like, sir, LOR Devin. That shouldn't be the case. You should have worked under him. You should have proved your worth. So yeah.
Yeah, so one of the nice things about MITACS internship is you get to work in a very diverse group. That is, in my group, one of the students was from Iran, then another from China, and rest of them were from India. Two of them from India, and one of them from Africa. And so we all grew up in under a different education system, and I think that actually has an impact on the type of thinking and the thinking ability. And it was very nice, and it was fun working together, and we used to have reading sessions together, brainstorm together, and it is a nice experience. And research is basically a collaborative activity, and when you do real research, you understand the importance of collaboration and working in a team. And I think MITACS really gives us a good opportunity for that. And specifically, my professor was more interested for the MITACS interns to learn more about how to do research rather than just publish any damn result. So it is very important. He wanted to focus on how to do research, how to read a research paper, and how to communicate your results well, how to participate in group discussions and just make your point there and criticize others' work. And so these are important aspects of research. And another nice thing about MITACS is networking. Be it in academia or in industry, networking is very important. So after your MITACS internship, you get to know a lot of other professors who are working in the same area. So I think that helps if you want to go into research afterwards. In terms of opportunities or further collaborations. So it's about research. I mean, doing the research the right way and networking. MITACS is all about this.
Neela, I'll come back to you a little later. I think Shinjini can take up. So Shinjini, you could elaborate a little bit about your experience.
So I would suggest, like, I have two things to say. First, that you have to be very open-minded while you work there, because I have personally faced a problem there. Like, while working in India, I have had certain biases. So I had an incident that I needed some help regarding a certain problem, and my PhD student was not able to provide that help. So she told me to contact another PhD student from our lab, and that student told us that another student who has actually passed out from the lab, like he is working now, has a job, and is in a different time zone. He knows how to solve this problem, so you should contact him. So I was a bit hesitant to contact him because I wasn't sure if he would be like willing to help me. Like, it was his past affiliation, so I wasn't sure whether he would have time for me. So I said to my PhD guide that I think I don't know whether I should contact him or not. Then my PhD guide told me that don't like assume things. Like, you should keep an open mind and try to contact him. He'll definitely help for sure. We are all friends here. Like, once we pass out of the lab, it doesn't mean that we are like we don't have any relationship at all outside this lab. So I think you should approach him and don't be shy regarding that. So yeah, that's one. And I think that especially in projects where you are mostly working with a PhD student, try and like don't don't try to be very friendly with your PhD student and try to be in his or her good books. He or she is your contact with your professor. Like, at the end of the project, your professor will ask him or her that how was the student, what was your evaluation of him or her. So try to be like try to avoid conflicts with your PhD students. So yeah, that's another thing.
That's very important. Yeah. Shisha.
So for me, things didn't work out exactly as it was told. So I was supposed to work with a point of contact, which was either a master's or a PhD student. But the master's student I was supposed to work with changed the project. So it was basically a lot of self-learning where I was given contacts. Like as Srinjini said, I had to contact people via LinkedIn. I had to contact a pass-out student who was not always willing to come to the lab, but I was call, like, come, help me out. And I would send outs over WhatsApp and stuff. So you need to be very persistent. And one more thing is that Canadians are very serious about their vacations. So you mail them and you need something, there would be an automated reply that I'm on vacation and no till that vacation has ended, so you won't get any help till then. So this would be a challenge because in India, I think there's this concept of micromanaging where your professor you can WhatsApp your professor literally if you have a doubt. There is mostly mailing and it's a bit formal in that sense. So you need to start doing things on your own, like looking things up. And suppose in my case, I had to work the software, which was only available in 7 universities across the world. So there wasn't many resources and there wasn't any YouTube videos or say any coaching or any kind of lesson or course that was available. So download the manual and I read it up. So I think the most different part for me in terms of like research was independent research in MITACS, that's for sure. And as for my lab, it was in the summers, so a lot less people were there. A lot of them were also working from home. So there would be some people, and they were actually friendly. Like initially, I didn't have access to my lab, so I would call them up or WhatsApp them, and they would like open the lab, give me the lab access. So they would go out of their way to help you out. That's for sure. But you need to be persistent with things to get things done. That's another important.
Right. I think my question for Niloy is a little different. Niloy, you could just speak about what do you think you missed out, like in doing this internship online. Like, what are the not about like the life at Canada, but I would say what are the research opportunities or the research experience that you possibly feel that you could have faced a little like better if you were at Canada like in person? And secondly is I know you also had a industry internship, that's why you couldn't make it to Canada, but for the juniors, would you recommend doing two of those at a time, or would you recommend them like focusing on MITACS internship completely solely, as a whole for the total span of 3 months? So what's your take on this?
All right. So, like primarily, I missed on the experimental experience. So, as like all the five of them told that experimental exposure is essential. Like you can't, everything can't be done on ANSYS, MATLAB. I know, like my primary work regarding my MITEX project was regarding ANSYS, but since I was in contact with, like I was quite lucky in the sense because for me the point of contact was not only the PhD student. Like we had a PhD student who used to help the other two interns in my project with their experimental work, but my professor used to arrange like bi-weekly meetings. So like every day, and we used to give him update about like the meetings were primarily like divided into two parts. Of the first was like I used to update him about the entire modeling stuff which I have done over the like the past few days, and then we would come to the experimental work and how both of them are like merging together to creating the appropriate result which is required. So and like as I mentioned, like one important trait of like my professor and as and people of Canada as a whole is that they're very appreciative. So like whatever small things you do, they'll be like, wow, what you have done, this is the greatest thing in the world, something like that. So so and yeah, of course, except for the life, the happening life of Canada, I miss that. But like definitely the like working with apparatus, like real apparatus, and in Canadian labs are much more well equipped and with stuff. As like I used to contact with the other two interns, they used to like give an elaborate explanation of how the lab was working, etc. But I couldn't experience it in person for sure. And so I missed that part, and the way it was all done. And another thing about my professor, and again all the professors, that they're ready to give any anything you require, like whatever they require, they're like, I'll just order it, something like that. So like the one of the major benefits of the MITACS internship is you will never lose out on research due to lack of resources, which is a major concern in GU. So you have every thing to do. All is required is your will to do. So if you're willing to do good work, it's absolutely easy. There are no hurdles in between.
I think we have come to the end of today's session. Thanks to the six of you. Like I was really nervous about this session, but also very, very excited. Like having the six of you together, in the same panel was actually, I think the answers that you all gave have benefited our juniors to quite a great extent, provided that they have their MITACS applications pending by the 22nd, which is next week. So thank you everyone. Thank you Nila and Vesha, Shinjini, Shisha, Oinav and Anubhav for being with us tonight. And I think that brings us to the end of tonight's session. And thanks to all the
Shaknik,
attendees.
one thing I did not mention, but I just remembered that it came in very useful when I was applying for the MITACS. So I'd just like to add it for like 2 minutes. Yeah. So while choosing your projects, I have seen people miss out on a lot of good projects because, well, maybe they weren't looking at it when they were jotting down the 7 projects. So I would always suggest that you make a long list first and then you make the short list. You take up an Excel file and make these columns that domain, professor name, project, there's a number, I think the reference number thing. So do that, and whatever you feel comes under your domain, and maybe you like the university and you have some of these skill sets, so you can jot down. I had jotted down first, I think about 18 projects I liked, And then I looked up those, because when you have this whole pool of projects in front of you, you cannot go and look at every professor and everything. So you first have to make a judgment just by the face value, just by the project description and the skills they need. So once you make the long list, it will be a lot easier, and then you eliminate one by one, and there'll be 7 left, and then you arrange it in whatever preference. And also right now the preference is not very important. You will get your interview call, and after that you will be able to change your preference. So maybe you get a interview call from project A, and right now project B is at the top. So if you feel like your interview has gone well, then you might move project A to the top, because it works that way, right? That if you have it at the top and you get it, then it's confirmed for you. But if you have it in your second preference, you might lose out on the project. So please choose your projects very wisely. Yeah, that's
Right.
it.
Orgodev has a question that he has seen that one professor might have more than one project enlisted. So are all of those projects under the same professor, are all of them funded or not?
Yes, absolutely.
Everything,
All of the projects
everything
are
you see on
funded.
there.
Nothing is like for none of them you have to pay from your own pocket. So that's not a big issue.
So in
But
MITACS, like all
sometimes-
projects are funded, right?
Right.
Yes, but sometimes it happens so that after you are like a candidate under consideration, then some of the projects might gray out. Like that, none of us had that experience, but some people said that some projects were grayed out because maybe MITACS didn't fund those
So,
projects.
like avoid selecting two projects from under the same prof.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah. So if like that prof backs out, you lose on two projects. So
Yes.
it's better if you lose on one.
Right. Moinak is another question.
One
How
more
hard
thing,
is it to
like
manage?
once-
Yeah, Shisha.
In once selecting the projects, it might happen like there are some domains which are covered with a lot of departments. Say suppose field mechanics work also exists in chemical engineering or civil engineering department. So don't always specify the department exactly. Like initially you can specify the department and look into the projects. Later just specify what your interests are, and once look that you haven't missed out on any project, because it might happen that there are projects of your interest but offered by another department. So look into that.
Right. We'll take the last question of the evening that Moinak has penned down. How hard is it to manage university studies while being in Canada for 3 months? I think the ones that went to Canada, any one of you can take this one.
I mean, the
So, want me to
semester
take
will be
this?
over. So semester studies will be over. So that is not like you need to do classes or something. But if you're tired, I mean, you can always brush up your knowledge if you want to sit for placements and stuff. But as such as like semester classes, it won't affect, because you will be going into the summer vacation, and the rest of the 2-3 weeks you'll be missing, you can come up and catch up with them later.
So if it's a concern for you, you can always reduce your internship to 10 weeks if that's a preference.
I think we have covered pretty much all the questions. Thanks to all of you once again, and I think it's time we close the session for tonight. Thanks to all the panelists, and thanks to all the attendees for being with us for, like, let's say, more than 1.5 hours. And thank you. That's the end of tonight's session. Have a great evening.
তো বাকিরা থাকবে এখানে?
কিছুক্ষণ থেকে যায়, কেউ কিছু বলতে পারে।
তুই ফার্স্টে বললি তো তোকে রিমুভ করা হবে।
সালা।
আচ্ছা, শুভঙ্কর রয়, মেকানিক্যাল থেকে তুমি কি ঘুমিয়ে পড়েছো? সবাই ঘুমিয়ে গেছে।
মিটিং এন্ড করে দিচ্ছি।
হ্যাঁ করে দে।
এক্সডি এন করতে পারেনি, জিপ করে গেছে। সৌম্যদীপ ভট্টাচার্য,
হ্যাঁ বল। হ্যাঁ
ভট্টাচার্য
বল। ও আচ্ছা।
প্যান্ডা,
এই বেরোস নি এখন?
এই সৌম্যদীপ মন্ডলকে ভাগা।
ভাই দাও।
হ্যাঁ
ঠিক আছে, চলে যাচ্ছি।
এই সৌম্যদীপ শুনতে পাচ্ছিস? ভট্টাচার্য রেকর্ড করেছে কেন? ঠিক আছে দেখছি, চল লিভ করছি।
টাটা।